Rahmoc Enterprises is a former NASCAR Winston Cup team that operated from 1978 to 1993. The team was owned by longtime engine builder Bob Rahilly and Butch. Mock left Rahmoc in 1993 to form his own team. Rahmoc Enterprises is still operating today, with Dick and Bob Rahilly still turning the wrenches as an engine builder and supplier for many NASCAR teams. They also build race cars and manage several smaller race teams. Beginnings. Rahmoc's debut in NASCAR came in 1978. At the Napa National 500, Mock drove the No. 75 Chevrolet to a 26th place finish. He also ran the Dixie 500, finishing 24th. Mock ran the Daytona 500 the next year, but finished 35th when he was involved in a wreck not of his making early in the race. After the Daytona wreck, Rahmoc had several different drivers. Some were Lenny Pond at Atlanta and Daytona, Bobby Brack at Charlotte, finishing 35th, and Bill Ellsworth for numerous races, his best finish being 16th at Richmond. Harry Gant drove in 1980 for the team at Riverside International Raceway, finishing 12th, and Texas World Speedway, finishing 10th. Ellsworth returned over the next 11 races, and the team also picked up sponsorship from Performer Boats. Before he was released, Gant returned for the next 2 races, before the team switched to part-time. John Anderson, Chuck Bone, Joe Milliken, and Ellsworth finished out the year. Milliken came back in 1981, but once again was released after the Gabriel 400. Ellsworth took over at Daytona, before running with Gary Balla and Tim Richmond for the rest of the season. Balla returned in 1982, posting a top 10 at the Coca-Cola 500, but was released after just 5 races. Joe Ruttman took over for most of the rest of the season, posting 4 top 5s before being replaced at Riverside by Jimmy Insolo. 1983 to 1992. In 1983, Rahmoc signed Neil Bonnet to drive their Hodgdon Chevy. Bonnet picked up wins at the World 600 and the Atlantic Journal 500. He finished 4th in points that year. After that year, longtime independent Dave Marcy was named driver, and had 9 top 10s and a 13th place in points. Subsequently, Lake Speed took over in 1985, finished 2nd in the Daytona 500, and had a 10th place finish in points. Speed had 2 10th place finishes in 1986, but was released after just 4 races in favor of Jody Ridley. Ridley had 1 top 10 before moving on after 10 races. Jim Sauter had 4 starts, before Morgan Shepherd took over for the balance of the season, posting 2 top 10s. In 1987, Bonnet returned with Valvoline as sponsor of Rahmoc's Pontiacs. Bonnet had 15 top 10s and was on his way to a top 10 points run, when he broke his hip in a crash at the Oakwood Homes 500. Ruttman returned to the team to finish the season for the team. Bonnet returned in 1988, and won 2 of the first 3 races, but eventually, he began to have health issues, fall off the pace, and left Rahmoc at the end of the season. In February 1988, Rahmoc and Bonnet took their Valvoline-sponsored Pontiac Grand Prix to Melbourne, Australia for an exhibition race where they were the winners of the first ever NASCAR race run outside of North America, the Goodyear NASCAR 500 at the Calder Park Thunderdome. As the race took part in Australia where they used the metric system, it was run over 500 kilometers rather than NASCAR's normal 500 miles. It took place on February 28. Just 1 week after Bonnet and the team had won the Pontiac Excitement 400 at the Richmond International Raceway. Bonnet led home fellow Alabama gang member Bobby Allison, who had won the Daytona 500 2 weeks previously, in a Buick LeSabre, and Dave Marcy driving a Chevrolet Monte Carlo. Upon returning to America, Bonnet would go on to win his third race in as many weeks when he won the next Winston Cup Series race, the Goodwrench 400 at Rockingham. Shepherd, who had filled in for Bonnet twice in 1988, took over the team full-time in 1989. He garnered 1 pole and 13 top tens. After leaving for Budmore Engineering for 1990, Rick Wilson joined the team, which switched to Oldsmobile and with sponsorship from Food Lion, Dinner Bell Foods. Wilson struggled heavily in his tenure, and left after just 1 year with the team. In 1991, Ruttman replaced Wilson. He finished third in the Daytona 500 and had 4 top 10 finishes and finished 20th in points. Without a sponsor for 1992, Dick Trickle drove the car in the Daytona 500, finishing 5th. After that event, team co-owner Bob Rahilly elected to retire from Winston Cup racing and return to his roots as an engine builder, supplier. Mock went on to form in his own new team, Butch Mock Motorsports. Final years, Butch Mock Motorsports. After 1992, Rahilly and Mock split. Rahilly continues building engines under the name of Rahmoc Racing Engines. Rahilly had no more involvement in Winston Cup racing after 1992. Mock was the sole owner of a new team he formed, Butch Mock Motorsports. Trickle came to BMM in 1993 with sponsorship from Carolina Pottery Factory stores. As the team switched to Ford, Trickle failed to finish in the top 10, and was released following the Die Hard 500. Todd Bodine ran the next 11 races and had a best finish of 23rd, before Phil Parsons ran the season finale at Atlanta. Bodine became the team's full-time driver in 1994, and had 7 top 10s and a 20th place in points. He was not able to duplicate that success in 1995, as he struggled in qualifying and had only 3 top 10s. He was released at the end of the season. Morgan Shepherd returned in 1996 with new sponsor Remington Arms, and had 5 top 10s on his way to a 19th in points. Despite this, he left at the end of the season, and was replaced by Rick Mast. Mast struggled in his first year with the team, failing to qualify for 3 races and finishing 32nd in points. Mast seemed to improve in 1998, winning the pole at North Carolina Speedway, but after missing 3 of the last 4 races, he left to drive for Cale Yarborough. Ted Musgrave took over in 1999. Due to the team's lack of performance, however, Musgrave grew increasingly vocal about the way things were run. During the summer of 1999, Mock sold BMM to newspaper entrepreneur Darwin Ott, who also owned a Busch Series team. Still, the team continued to struggle, causing Musgrave to quit after the Pennzoil 400. Hut Strickland took over the car at the Napa 500, but failed to qualify. Driver history: Butch Mock, 1978-79. Bill Ellswick, 1979-81. Bobby Brack, 1979. Harry Gant, 1980. Lenny Pond, 1980. John Anderson, 1980. Chuck Bone, 1980. Kyle Petty, 1980. Jim Sauter, 1980. 1986. Joe Milliken, 1980-81. Dick May, 1981. Tim Richmond, 1981. Gary Balla, 1981-82. Joe Ruttman, 1982. 1987. 1991. Jimmy Insolo, 1982. Neil Bonnet, 1983. 1987-88. Dave Marcy, 1984. Lake Speed, 1985-86. Jody Ridley, 1986. Morgan Shepherd, 1986. 1988-89. 1996. Rick Wilson, 1990. Dick Trickle. 1992 Daytona 500. Suspended operations. Returned in 1993 with Butch Motorsports. Todd Bodine. 1993–95. Rick Mast. 1997–98. Ted Musgrave. 1999. Hut Stricklin. DNQ for 1999 Napa 500. Wally Dallenbach Jr. 2000. Rahmoc Enterprises Winston Cup owner statistics. 1978–1992.